So ready to announce them. Again, measuring and maximizing patient outcomes in value-based care. Please welcome Amine, Benmoussa, venture partner at Karista, Luiza, Dobre, founder and CEO at Komed Health, Gandolf, Finke, founder and managing director at Mika, moderated by the wonderful Grace Cordovano, PhD, board-certified patient advocate and founder at Enlightening Results. Please join me and welcome our guests with applause, please. Hello, hello. Let's test the moderator's mic first.
Good morning, dzień dobry.
Good morning, dzień dobry. Grace, Enlightening Results. With that brand name, you have no choice but to make the conversation enlightening indeed. Enjoy.
I'm ready, let's do it. I'm Grace Cordovano. I'm a board-certified patient advocate specializing in the oncology space, and my day-to-day is working with patients and their loved ones from point of diagnosis through survivorship or end-of-life care planning. I've been doing this personally and professionally for over 25 years. In addition to my day-to-day, I'm the primary care partner to 2 disabled adults and a patient myself. And I have the honor of being joined with the stars of this panel. I'll turn over to ladies first. Luiza, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here. Very nice. My name is Luiza Dobre. I'm the CEO and founder of Komed Health. We actually do a communication platform meant to accelerate processes around the whole value chain around the patient. It's a patient-centric platform. And we integrate with various hospital information systems to facilitate that. And we are based in Zurich.
Amine.
Hi everybody, Amine Benmoussa. I'm venture partner with Karista, a early stage health tech fund based in Paris. We invest across European opportunities, focusing on digital health and health tech and opportunities more broadly.
And Gandolf.
Hi, I'm founder and managing director of a company called Fosanes, or Mika Health. We help cancer patients go through therapy. It's a digital therapeutics platform that has served more than 100,000 cancer patients based out of Germany, classified as a medical device, doing tons of clinical trials, and yeah, happy to join the conversation today.
Fantastic. So I'm going to kick off by level setting. One of the most misunderstood words in healthcare is patient. We broadly assume that a patient is someone who just needs to receive care. And ironically, in the United States, patient means being able to endure delays and frustrations without getting annoyed. And if anyone has been a patient in the United States, that's far from the truth. And while we sit and talk about being patient-friendly, patient-centered, patient-first, putting the patient at the center of the care, when you walk through the halls of medicine, when you sit in the ER, when you sit in the waiting room, you hear non-compliant, non-adherent, lazy, drug-seeking, illiterate, hysterical, frequent flyer. None of these imply a trusting partnership with our healthcare system. After doing this for 25 years, and as I look at the potential of value-based care, I categorize the word patient into 5 different life experience journeys. 1, the proactive wellness seeker. 2, someone who has an acute encounter with healthcare, whether it's strep throat at urgent care or the flu, a broken arm that may require the emergency room, or maybe an uncomplicated labor and delivery. All of these issues resolve and a patient is able to continue with their life. But at a certain point, we cross over a prime meridian where we have chronic illness or multiple comorbidities. The 4th category being something life-altering, life-limiting, cancer, ALS, Alzheimer's. And the 5th category that we basically never talk about is advanced disease, end of life, active death. All of these categories are patients, all have very unique unmet needs, all have needs for information, tools, and technology. And as we dream big about value-based care, how do we start approaching these categories uniquely and then understanding what the social drivers of health are for all of these situations? Because the reality is, once you cross over into that prime meridian of category 3, 4, 5, all of these individuals may be suffering from social determinants of health that puts them in a survival category. Each morning I start my day with a meditation. I'm a big fan of the Calm app. And this morning I'll share what this morning's short meditation was. It was about how when we each need information, we turn to Google, and we Google. But God forbid you Google in healthcare, because you will be shamed. Oh my God, what a stupid patient. Can you believe they're Googling? When I walk into the office and my patients have something that they printed out, you get the, eye roll. Well, I loved the earlier presentation because I think we're at a point of inflection where now a patient is going to be powered by AI and digital tools, and will now be able to level set the playing field. So this morning's meditation was about how we seek wisdom and how we start trusting our inner wisdom, or our internet. And when we think about value-based care, how do we activate individuals' internet with information tools and technology to drive partnership with our providers, our healthcare systems, and those that are developing the future of digital health and digital therapeutics? I'll start off this discussion by kicking off what are the biggest barriers, our biggest challenges in achieving value-based care and success. I'll start with Amine.
Sure. I mean, I think you did a pretty good level setting, and one of the interesting things with value-based care is we've been trying to evolve through these new payment models, but it's kind of new, and there's still a lot to learn. When we talk about like improving patient outcomes and reducing costs and value-based care, a lot of buzzwords, but we don't even have the same definition of these words. How do we define better outcomes? How do we manage the whole interoperability thing? And interoperability, even itself, is often interpreted by a lot of people as how do I, as a technology layer, integrate with the existing EHR. But it goes far beyond that. It goes far beyond just integrating with DHR, but also integrating with all of these new layers. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, hospitals were adopting few technologies. Today, hospitals are inundated with all sorts of technologies, and you need to make all of these pieces work together, communicate, exchange data, and make that data actionable. We're far from that today. Like, how do we really not only make sure we're interoperable, but also derive data that's going to help us measure outcomes? How do we define better outcomes? How do we leverage the power of predictive analytics to really understand what are the risks with each patient, and how do we sort of treat patients like throughout the care continuum? And to your point, like not necessarily looking at only acute patients. Today, in a lot of cases, we're only taking care of patients while they're within the confines of a hospital. But how do we take care of that patient from the wellness seeker, the worried well, people who are taking proactive approaches to improving their health, all the way to end of life, but really considering that as a true continuum?
I noticed you didn't mention fax machines and images on CD in there, so I just want to point that out because that's one of the primary ways that we exchange information, and it's not acceptable, and no other industry operates that way. Luiza, can you tell us from your corner of the world, what are our biggest barriers?
Absolutely. So just to take a step back to your point that it all starts with the patient. And also, although we are a platform dedicating to hospitals, to healthcare providers, the reason why we started it to actually improve the whole patient care journey and safety. And when we started, we realized that actually inefficient communication, unable to exchange information with tools like fax, pagers, unsecure WhatsApp, paper, and so on, leads to one of the third causes of death for patients. And this was really in the moment we basically decided to start this company 6 years ago. And I had to realize that streamlining communication in healthcare setups has to be patient-centric, because currently the communication or all the care process is around the physician or around the hospital and not around the patient. And patients, before becomes a patient, is a citizen. And also ambulant care becomes more and more prominent. And basically what we realized that streamlining communication within an institution, but also between institutions, before and after the patient comes to the hospital, is one of the critical aspects. And I believe that value-based care with a better care coordination, and this is what we are doing, and also you mentioned interoperability. Today, communication by itself, it doesn't help improving patient care. So in the moment a collaboration platform is not integrating with electronic medical record, pulling information, but pushing it back, it doesn't add value. So basically what I realized, with a better communication, you can distribute timely and accurately information around the continuum of care. Many times patients have duplications of tests. I bet you know, you go to a doctor, oh, we need to do this test again, and so on. With a better communication platform, you can distribute this information when it's ready, and you can adjust the care process. The second one is being able to proactively and preventively trigger notification every time there is an event around the patient to the entire care team. And I think when you are able to do this in a patient-centric context, you really create value. We have realized that you can reduce even emergency response by able to push this information. And third, last but not least, actually measuring what is the value of all these initiatives. And this is what we are doing. How can you measure that the way distributing the information around the care improves actually the care process?
Gandolf, you've impacted so many lives already, and yet what would you say are some barriers that we're still facing in achieving success in value-based care?
So, going third, I'll just add to what was said before. I agree with a lot of what was said. I think two more points that I wanted to point out is when we talk about value-based care, I think there's sort of a standard, we assume there's a standard way of measuring it, and we use patient-reported outcomes, etc. And while they've been established and they work to a large degree, I think, they don't consider the personal value function of each individual, right? So, and we have this example continuously in our everyday with cancer patients, that patients value specific things over other things, whereas the medical professional might see things differently, right? And it's not always intuitive in terms of what the patient prefers, right? Some are more inclined to take hormone therapy, which might affect your sexual drive and that part of your life. But others will be very reluctant to taking that, and they would be much more open to losing their taste, right? And to put it very bluntly, right? These are very, very strong consequences that these decisions incur. And I feel like oftentimes we're not doing a great job as a health system or as a healthcare environment, ecosystem, in actually educating of what the options are, because you assume that you already know what the right answer is. That's one piece. And I think the other piece, or that even to continue a little bit more, that this extends all the way into what you mentioned, end-of-life care. Right? I think about a third of all cancer patients get chemotherapy in the last 3 months of their lives, when you know that they're not surviving, right? And they're going through a lot of suffering at that point. The immune system is highly suppressed at that point. And this is not what I think human care maybe at a general understanding from a society perspective looks like. But it's also deeply ingrained in physician decision-making, because when you get trained as a physician, at least when you used to get trained as a physician, the main point is to maintaining life in the body, right? And it's less about ensuring quality of life. And this brings the second part along, which I wanted to add to this, which is the accounting of it. At the end of the day, how do you actually measure value-based care, right? Do you take a quality of life years, QALYs per dollar invested, and that is it? But you can never make that actually work, because then you would focus on specific diseases and completely disregard others, because it's not efficient to invest into those. So I think it's a really, really hard problem to crack from that perspective. And I think we're taking big steps with technology to even collect patient-reported outcomes, etc. So we are developing it in the right direction, I think, but there's so much more to do, and we're nowhere near, let's say, a future where it's actually value-based care.
I love all the points that you shared, and from the patient and care partner perspective, I think a big barrier is the amount of work that people need to do to get the care they need, which I call patient administrative burden. There's so much paperwork, there's so much lack of communication, lack of coordination. Patients are getting copies of their records, they're lugging them from one doctor to another. There's insurance appeals, insurance denials. Then there's connecting to housing vouchers and food insecurity and other research, transportation. It becomes a full-time job very quickly, and that's if you have either yourself or your loved one. But the reality is many families have multiple family members and individuals that have medically complex cases, and it becomes unsustainable quickly. And this is a wonderful opportunity for incorporation of more digital tools, more automation, more AI. So I'm hopeful for the future.
If I can add just maybe one point, and going back to one of Luiza's point about care coordination, many hospitals are overlooking, so they believe that technology is going to be fixing huge problems. There's a huge component which is change management that's being overlooked. Because at the end of the day, you can apply technology layers, but you have people delivering that care. And unless you really take change management seriously to really enhance people, to enhance them to really apply that care coordination appropriately, and align interests as well, because even within the same hospital, sometimes you have a mix of different payer models, and the interests of one service are not the same as the other service. So really making sure that the interests are aligned, all in favor of patient and patient outcomes. You can apply whatever technologies you want, you're never gonna really succeed.
Absolutely, I could not agree with you more.
Let's talk about the 5 categories that I outlined. And I want to talk about, let's bring the conversation now to maximizing outcomes, reducing costs, making it profitable and sustainable in value-based care models. Let's start with the tough one. How do we maximize outcomes at end of life? And there was a great question in the audience in the session prior about quality of life. Can we all align? We all represent different stakeholders. Can we really maximize outcomes at end of life? And what would that look like from each of your corners of the world? Luiza, I'll start with you.
It's a good question. I think it's very, very important to involve the patient and the family in the whole process. And I think also to the point, it's very important that it's a cultural change in the hospital, which at the moment, patient, at the end of life, patient is not capable to do that, right? So the family, it's the only one who can do that. Many times I witness, I've been in this industry for 7 years now, and I witness so many errors and so many frustrations on the patient side, cutting the wrong leg, giving the wrong information, doing the operation twice, and so on and so forth. So I think by involving with digital tools, but the problem is not the existing of digital tool, is the change management, as you said. I think this is a crucial part of it.
Gandolf, I'm going to jump to you.
Yeah, I think it starts with one interesting point that's very nationally solved, is where does end of life actually happen? Right? I think we have obviously hospital settings when things go bad and you don't have time to transition into a hospice, etc., or even allow for patients to go home. That doesn't always work. But I think ensuring that humans have an end of life according to their wishes should be a fairly high goal to achieve. I think we all kind of wish for that, to maybe not wake up but not go through pain, etc. Involving the patient's preferences, of course, involving the loved ones, and yeah, I think you talked about the administrative burden, and that can even at end of life be a huge thing. So ensuring that patients are well educated at an earlier time when a disease comes up, and not when it's in the end of its stage, maybe. And I think actually we have to be a little bit more careful around the AI topic that's going around these days. When you read articles that one of the largest health systems in the US is using AI to automate claims management, and it has a 90% error rate, so 90% error rate. That's greatly and amazingly efficient for them, I'm sure, but I'm not sure that's to the benefit of the of humanity, if you want to put it in broad terms. Right? So I think, yes, you can be empowered by AI on the patient side, but you want to make sure that it's also responsibly being used on all sides. And you don't want your physician to use ChatGPT to look up something and that paper was made up and that's actually not the truth. There's a lot of regulation that I think in our space is somewhat needed. I'm generally not a huge proponent of too much regulation in this, but I think when it comes to life and death decisions, this is not really debatable. Right?
I want to start with you, Amine, and jump to now value. So from your perspective as an investor, value can be tricky. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And value to an investor may be different from value to a patient, which previous discussions alluded to. Can we bridge this gap and meet somewhere in the middle where an investor and other stakeholders can really align with what patients' wants and needs are? And I just want to point out at the end of the day is these are people's lives. So it's not just a patient, it's people's lives at stake. So how do we marry on value?
Yeah. As an investor, I mean, obviously we're profit-driven. We have limited partners who invest in our funds, and we need to be generating returns to them. But I think if we lose sight of the fact, I mean, if you talk to any healthcare investor, you will find like different flavors, but the thesis is generally going to be improving patient outcomes while decreasing healthcare costs. So everybody talks about improving patient outcomes, again, in different flavors. If we lose sight of the fact that at the forefront of everything we do, there is a patient, we're doomed as investors. I mean, I've invested in biotech companies where we had like a very average trial with like results that are now going to make it through getting approval to getting from a phase 2 to a phase 3, but we still kept patients on compassionate care, even if it cost the startup a few $million. So I think that investors are vividly aware of the fact that patients are really the reason why we do this job. And I don't think there is a divergence or a misalignment of interest between what we want to do as investors, which is invest in highly profitable, fast growth companies that are going to be generating some returns and delivering outcomes. I mean, the two really go hand in hand. If we really deliver strong value to patients, but at the same time understand that we're always working under this, call it like a multivariate equation, where we have the three stakeholders, patient, providers, and payers, and understand that for each kind of technology, maybe the weights of each variable may be different, but they're still there. And the patient is always going to be there. Unless we can really bring some value to the patient, the technology is not going to be adopted. Again, just bringing value to the patient alone and increasing costs to providers and payers is not a working solution. But our end game is really finding these opportunities where we can have a value proposition that's clear enough for all three stakeholders and really dealing with this, again, as a multivariate equation.
Mm-hmm. So now, Luiza and Gandolf, I'm going to now jump to you both to hear your thoughts. We've talked about understanding patients' unmet needs. We've talked about barriers. We've talked about outcomes, value. Now, how can technology integration in healthcare systems be optimized to ensure effective measurement and improvement of patient outcomes in value-based care models of the future?
So I think we're on a good way there in general. There's more and more coming. We talked about patient-reported outcomes. I think the actual integration of these elements into standard of care, right, when they have proven their impact on patients' lives, on outcomes, on care, or on the financial side, I mean, this all needs to be somehow paid for. So I think efficiency is something that we also need to demand to some degree from these solutions. Then making it easy for these to be transitioning into the standard of care. So I think from a healthcare provider perspective, there's a lot of resistance to try out new tools by now because we've gone through years and years of promises. Some of this has worked and some of this has not worked, and you sort of go through waves and waves of this. And I can understand that that's frustrating to some degree, right? So I think really making an effort to provide standards as a regulating body or as a government for these systems to flourish, also to promote these things both among patients and providers and nurses and caretakers, etc. So it's not just the patient or not just the doctor, right? It's all of these that have to sort of go in unison in this. And I think there are great platforms to build this upon. And we are on the way of doing that, right? I mean, you're seeing more and more of this being proliferated. If you ask me, it's probably too slow, but I guess that's normal for what I'm doing. I think we're in a good way, but there's more to be done.
So I will take on that, and actually what I realized when we were talking, that is one party missing at this table or at this panel, is basically the hospital, or actually the one who is actually really implementing the care and purchasing these solutions. I think there are a lot of innovations, outstanding innovation based on their promise, but the problem is implementing these technologies. How do you implement an innovation in a hospital? This is where even venture capitalists are actually hesitating, because the sales cycle, it's very long, 1 to 1.5 years, I would say. And me as the provider to hospitals, right, we develop our solutions. So I will make a specific case explaining basically how our product works. Before we started, we spent probably, we did a count until before 2020, about 3,500 hours observing doctors, nurses, how they work. And what we came to the conclusion, we realized that nurses spent 80% of their time on doing administrative work, chasing for the physician, and physicians themselves spend 20 to 30% of their time trying to find the information they need, right? All this information is very siloed. Now, hospitals have been created in a very, very siloed way. So you cannot bring a product and expect that tomorrow everything will be changed. All the fax, the pagers, legacy type of electronic medical record that take 3 minutes to load will be vanished. So now how do you work with the system to bring innovation? And this is what we have been doing. We started with just a secure chat. I know a secure chat itself will not solve the value-based care, but will reduce those number of interruptions. As a physician, we did a study. You get interrupted about 12 times an hour. 80% of those times of those interruptions are not urgent. You can send it via asynchronous way of communication, for example. Secondly, a doctor, a patient, when he comes to hospital, and stays about 4 or 5 days, the data is handled by about 40 to 50 different healthcare professionals, hotelier. Imagine the humongous amount of data points, and all of these data points are everywhere. So how do we bring all these data points in one single platform? And this is what we have been doing. We developed a simple, secure chat that is patient-centric. We integrate interoperable with the hospital information system. Everybody asks me, is it difficult to integrate? No, it's if you have the right technology, it's very easy to integrate. The technology is not the problem, but how do you do the change management at the point of care? How do you, and how we did it, today we have almost 25 hospitals working with our solution. We work with doctors and nurses, and that helped a lot. This is not necessarily the scalable model to go from 25 hospital to 1,000 hospital, but this is how we build it together with the healthcare professionals, with the hospital, our product, to actually drive those efficiencies. So I think it's a combination between interoperability, creating a platform that is really patient-centric, and working with the providers, with the doctors, with the people like you who work with the product, that create the stickiness.
I'm going to add co-creation with the patient voice, with the care partner. And I'll point out also co-creating with the surviving care partner, the individual who may have been caring for a loved one who has now died. And those individuals have walked the walk and have so much wisdom to share. How are we feeding those experiential learnings and lived experience back into our integration, implementation, ideation, co-creation cycles? So I'll pause there if there's any questions.
Do we have anyone keen to ask a question to our panelists? Yes, we have one. Yeah. Kindly wait for the microphone, and we're ready.
Hi, my name is Sandra. I work for Novartis in Switzerland. I was curious about the role of the caregiver. We've spoken a lot about the patient, and actually towards the end, I think we sort of started moving towards more the role of the caregiver. How do you feel we can appropriately and effectively integrate them into this process?
I'll take a bite at that.
So I think one of the missing pieces of the conversation is we don't put any of the tools and information and technology geared towards the caregiver, the person who's willing to catch a grenade to help their loved one, and who is likely handling all the patient administrative burden, all of the care coordination, all of the access to medical records. It has to be that value-based care prioritizes, especially in chronic illness, multiple comorbidities, life-altering, life-limiting, and especially end-of-life care, bringing in that care partner, caregiver, health proxy or advocate, so that they are empowered with that information to make educated, informed decisions about their care. Otherwise, this is all going to fail.
And also to add on that, I think since we talk so much about AI will not solve the problems in healthcare, but will support the healthcare provider to actually focus more on the patient, giving that empathy on the patient, talking to the family, things that AI cannot solve, but AI can solve the automation of tasks to actually do that, which currently the healthcare providers are less and less, so especially nurses. We have a huge lack of nurses in the healthcare system. The patient is overseen somehow because the nurses don't have time to actually offer that empathy and care to the patient anymore. So AI can actually help that, to do that.
To your question, we'll actually launch something for caretakers. I think it's a key element, especially in cancer care. Patients are affected, but we know that already our solution is being used by caretakers to inform themselves. But we think it's really important for caretakers to be educated themselves on what they can actually do, how they can contribute in the care, and at the same time take care of themselves. We know that in oncology, caretakers are in the early phase psychologically more affected than the patient actually, because nobody talks to you, you don't get any information, you're sort of always second in line, somewhere behind, and you're supposed to be the strong one for the patient. So we think that's a key element to work towards.
If there's no other questions, I'm going to ask you to take 60 seconds, and it's the end of the year. Everyone loves predictions. Wrap this up with your prediction for 2024. What's going to be a big thing for value-based care success?
That's a tough one. Let me take a crack at it. I think from now on is going to be a great time for companies building technologies or solutions for value-based care. It took a little bit of time for the whole model to sort of take off, but even like the largest payers in the US, Medicare, Medicaid, have been shifting to value-based care, and the whole value-based care market, if I can call it that way, has been exploding, at least since COVID. So I think companies that are really building technologies or solutions catering to, again, keeping in mind the three stakeholders, ensuring that they're delivering better outcomes to patients, but at the same time ensuring they can have a very clear value proposition to providers with a clear ROI, are going to be successful. I think, to one of your earlier points, really ensuring that you spend enough time understanding providers' workflows and making sure you're not disruptive to those workflows, you're as seamless as possible. So integration is not only a technology thing, but it's also a people's thing. How do we integrate into existing workflows? How do we integrate with all of these layers and the legacy systems that are not going anywhere, or at least not for the time being? So companies that can really have and I understand it's much easier said than done, but who can really check all of these boxes have a pretty nice future ahead of them.
So from my point of view, it also has never been a better time to innovate in healthcare. And I think as much as I empathize with my fellow entrepreneurs, it's a very difficult industry to be in, but it's one of the most exciting industry to be in, because we do not just bring innovation, we bring innovation that can actually change lives and improve lives. And I think what I believe I would not say a trend, but I think what will happen in the next couple of years, we will build trust. And I think this is missing. Trust, in the moment you have trust, that innovative solutions can change the system, can improve the system, can bring value-based care, this is when you can actually implement. And technologies are out there. That's not the problem. Innovators are out there. It's building trust.
I'll be quick. So I think we will see mainly incremental change. Being realistic in healthcare, we won't see a different world end of next year than now. But it's going in the right direction. I think every part of the equation in healthcare has understood that this is the right direction, that value-based care is the future, and now it's about figuring out the details and getting that forward. I think particularly for the digital therapeutics part and digital health solutions piece, we'll see a different wave of commercialization, I think. I think the solution in general is not to make the hospitals pay for it, and we have to figure out different ways of getting these solutions, if they are actually value contributing, into a commercial place that they can flourish as companies and as offerings.
I'm going to end this with, I'm sure many of you have seen the sign, don't confuse your Googling with my medical degree. I think the future is going to show us that a patient powered by smart tools and technologies, and what Andrew presented earlier this morning on the potential of clinical decision support and open access AI tools are going to power patients into the future. And really the future is going to be the power of the doctor powered by AI plus the patient powered by AI, and that's where the magic's going to happen. Thank you so much to my panelists and for the questions.
Thank you very much, Grace. Thank you, Luiza. Gentlemen, thank you so very much again for the discussion.